From disruptive innovators to visionary investors. From founder journeys to capital challenges. We delve into the passion, the perseverance, and the pivotal wins of those building enterprises that go beyond profit, of those shaping the future of inclusive growth in India. We uncover the stories behind the ideas, the trade-offs that rarely make it to the headlines, and the mindset it takes to turn purpose into practice. Impact in Motion, a podcast series presented by NSRCEL. Your host for the series is Nachiket Kulkarni. Most recently, Nachiket led the social enterprise vertical Impact Orbit at NSRCEL. Our guest for this episode, Professor Saurav Mukherjee, teaches postgraduate and doctoral courses at IIM Bangalore, specializing in organization design and inclusive business models. Manoj Kumar, founder and CEO of Social Alpha.
Good morning, Saurav, and good morning, Manoj.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for making it to IIM Bangalore and NSRCEL on this cloudy but beautiful Saturday morning. I know you have your busy schedules and you made some time for us. And, thank you so much. And I hope we're going to have some really good conversations about social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship as well in general. A little bit context on why we're doing this. NSRCEL, as you know, has been an incubator for 25 years. We probably are in parallel with the evolution of the social entrepreneurship space and the Indian entrepreneurship movement. And I don't think during this evolution and with the new forms of communication coming in, there's content for especially social entrepreneurship for anyone else as a layman to read it up or see or understand. There are formal sources, but out there in the public domain, there's nothing that a layman can understand. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. And another thing is, if you go deeper in the sector, there are case studies, there are books, but there's nothing long form out there which will be useful for entrepreneurs, enabling ecosystem players, investors, or anyone else actually trying to understand this beast, if you will, of social entrepreneurship. So that's what we're doing here. Today's episode, we'll try and crack it down for a layman to understand what social entrepreneurship is. It could be useful to potential entrepreneurs as well. It could be useful to someone who just wants to understand the sector better. And it could be useful even for some entrepreneurs who are early stage, beginning to grow, and sort of want to go deeper and become thought leaders in the sector. One of the motivations and the reasons for this specific topic is we have seen social entrepreneurship evolve. Even when I took a leap in this space, people thought, when I said impact investments or social entrepreneurship, people in my family, among friends, still think I'm carrying a Jola bag, I'm wearing a kurta, I'm going around everywhere, trying to preach charity or society-friendly activities, if you will. But the ecosystem has evolved, education has evolved, investments, entrepreneurship, everything has evolved. And I think one of the primary things that we cover today is make people understand how things have evolved in the space, right? So before we get into it, maybe I have one question for both of you. Manoj, what is this one myth about social entrepreneurship that you want to break for 2025?
Thanks for inviting me, Nachiket. Biggest myth, I think, is a lot of people think that it's some frugal act that you can do and create some innovation, right? Some jugaad thing. It's actually not. It's as sophisticated or maybe more sophisticated than what the mainstream entrepreneurship looks like, because you are trying to solve tough problem that market has discarded or ignored. So it's not some frugal hack. It's much more than that. And that's a big myth.
What about you, Saurav?
Well, I will start with a very famous statement that somebody made, that there is fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. I think that's a myth. There is no fortune out there. And building on what he just said, it's a lot of hard work. And yes, if you think of fortune in non-monetary terms, in terms of satisfaction, happiness, welfare, maybe there is. But certainly, people should not come here to make money.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That's a strong statement. I'll probably debate that a bit later. Okay. All right. So let me start with you, Saurav. For obviously, audience knows you as professor in the entrepreneurship area and organization development in IIM Bangalore. But for someone who doesn't know you, right, would love to know who is Saurav Mukherjee, where were you brought up, what your childhood was like, what your education was like, a personal background that eventually led you to do what you do. And maybe we can end with the multiple hats that you wear today as a professional. We can start there.
Okay, so I grew up in a relatively small town in West Bengal called Durgapur, and then, like most young people in India, I went to an engineering college. And after engineering college, was wondering what exactly I'm doing in life. And then management was a call, but since I joined MBA program a little late in life, so I wanted to become a faculty member, did my PhD, and having worked in the industry for a while, IT companies, consulting companies, and then came back at IIM Bangalore as a faculty member. And I think I definitely found my calling here. So I have been a faculty member now for 22 years. My initial years were very focused on looking at large companies, competitiveness of Indian firms. But because of a lot of stuff, I started looking at this whole space of largely, which I would say, business as a force for good. Can a for-profit commercial entity do certain things which actually benefit the society apart from making money for the shareholders? And that's how I got attracted to the inclusive business model space, which is going to be the topic of discussion today. Apart from that, I continue to be a faculty member here, have picked up a lot of administrative responsibilities, and on a personal note, also a strong enthusiastic follower of sports.
Yes, we know you're an avid runner as well. We try to sort of motivate ourselves by seeing you. What about you, Manoj? Tell us your story.
I grew up in a small town in Uttarakhand called Pithoragarh. It used to be a very small town. Now it's no more a small town. But when I was growing up, we had, I think, 20,000 people in the town. So yeah, went to school there. I studied physics and maths and then finance, and ended up in financial markets for many years. 12 or 13 years in financial markets. Became an entrepreneur after that. Did a couple of startup gigs. Then ended up in private equity, mergers, acquisitions, leverage buyout space. Ran a small fund of my own and then called it a day about 15 years back. I said, I need to do something different.
You did 20 plus years of finance and capital.
Yeah. I'm too old. I want this.
No, your LinkedIn says this career has ended.
Yeah,
something like that for capital.
I wish I ended it earlier than I did, but yeah, it was too late. I was 45 when I decided to retire and just focus on something more meaningful. Yeah, and then that led to thinking about what do I do. So I said, I would definitely want to work in what we call social sector or development sector, but I just did not want to build another NGO. So what to do next? So that search, connected me with a number of people. I really call them social entrepreneurs because they took the risk of building, whether it was a for-profit or not-profit.
That didn't matter to you. Yeah.
They took risk, they had skin in the game, and they were trying to solve some of the problems. I was searching for what to do.
Yes.
Right? And that search led to one insight, and that was that the social sector lacks innovation. So we have hundreds of thousands of NGOs, great people working in villages, in livelihoods, healthcare, climate action. But what is missing was innovation, because a lot of these people were doing a lot of good work with the services orientation. And if you could provide innovation there, right? And that led to this whole experiment that I call Social Fund now. I bootstrapped it for a few years and then decided to create a.
But will you consider this like from one form of extreme capitalism on finance and capital markets to philanthropy and innovation?
See, what I do, I call it operating philanthropy, right? So Social Alpha is a philanthropic organization, but it operates. The thing is, it's not a shift from capitalism. I think capitalism will die if we don't make it more inclusive and empathetic, right? So we have to reimagine capitalism, right? And since industrial revolution, capitalism has grown, right? And it's now, if we don't fix it, it will die under its own pressure, right? So all the inequity that it generates has to be addressed, and I think innovation is one tool that can help us democratize this whole wealth creation and inequity.
Amazing, amazing. All right. I think I'll we sort of with the foundations, right? And I would like to start with Saurav. We keep reading these numbers. There are 3.5 million social enterprises and nonprofits in the country. Then we have numbers like, let's say something like only 10%, at least in the modern form, only 10% of all the venture capital goes to the new age social entrepreneurship or impact investments. Among all these numbers, as an academician, right, where does social entrepreneurship stands today? And if you can give us some history on its evolution over the period of n number of years that you would want to talk about, where are we today and where did it start?
Okay, so I think once I started looking at this whole field, I thought there were two important, what one may call inflection points, and they came pretty close to each other. One was Professor C.K. Prahlad, and he saying that there is a fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, right? Something I referred to when I started. Now, he was coming from a very strong corporate strategy, international business perspective. And his idea was that how do you motivate the multinational companies to come and sell their products and services in typically developing nations in those days, right? India. So you would talk about the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China. And for him, it was very simple that these companies need to make money. And he was giving them a hope that in the process of making money, you can also solve problems of the poor.
Right.
So suppose you give a bottle of shampoo to a poor village girl, then she will actually get a good product to wash her hair, and in the process you make money, right? So now later on we understood there was a lot of deficiency in the model.
Around what timeline was this? 80s,
this was about
90s?
1997, 1998. He was a very inspirational person. I mean, he would go to Dharavi and pick up 5 paisa chocolate, and he said, nowhere in the world can you get a chocolate for 5 paisa. And remember that the entrepreneur is actually making money here. He is not here to donate, right? So, and it was, of course, an academician, very powerful speaker. At least what he did was he made this whole concept that you can address the poverty markets and still make money. It's possible. And MNC started discussing it, thinking about it, may not have translated anything into reality. So that's one part of the story. The other inflection point was Muhammad Yunus actually getting the Nobel Prize. And when that everybody started noticing, then they realized what the kind of work he has done. And once again, we are talking of an academician who is very, very good in writing, very good in communicating. And he had shown that it is possible to run a bank, which in this case is Grameen Bank, which lends to the poor, which was traditionally a sector which was overlooked by traditional bankers, and still make money. I mean, you would come and show numbers that my NPAs are less than the best of banks in the world. And very interestingly, he got a Nobel Prize in Peace. And this whole discussion was that why did they give him Nobel Prize in Peace? And and the Nobel Committee actually went and said that the biggest cause of violence and war is poverty. Okay. And so if you can solve the problem of poverty, then you will have peace in the world. And that's why we thought we give Dr. Yunus the prize for that.
Not in economics.
Not in economics, right? So now I think these were the two inflection points which formalized the whole fit. Though I must say that if you look at in our country, I mean, if you look at something like an Amul, or a Seva, right? Or if you look at Dr. V's work, these were typical social enterprises because they were wanting to create impact at scale with people who are economically underprivileged and building a business model around that. I think India that way already had social enterprises, but it took two academics to formalize the whole field, and then we started exploring it from both an academic angle and a corporate angle, understood the pros and cons, and I would say that that's when it really took off.
Okay. So before Prahlad or Professor Yunus, it was like who were the actors? Was it the government? Was it non-profits? What was the scene before that, 1995?
See, broadly, this is the way, this is how even I understood the field. Because for me, there is a market which caters to people who can pay. So, when you are selling cars, when you are selling steel, you are typically looking at the upper level of the economic pyramid, right? Whichever way you look at it. Then who caters to the poor people? And the traditional notion was it has to be the government. Government taxes you, they will have surplus, and they will use the tax to, provide education to the poor people, poor girl child, etc., set up hospitals, etc. Now, we know that government in our country do not have enough resources. So here comes the not-for-profit. So the not-for-profits, their financing model is you go and raise money from donors, philanthropists, etc., and solve the problem. Why do you think not-for-profits were more, I would say, popular than the government? Because they were able to close the loop. When I pay tax to the government, I don't know where the money is going. Maybe it is going to, fund some defense procurement. I am not emotionally connected to it. But a not-for-profit comes and says, hey, you know what? You want to fund a small farmer? I will use your money to do that. So they were able to close the loop much better.
So you could say that, in fact, the not-for-profits or formally called NGO, right? Non-governmental. So government, non-governmental, and then you can say evolution of
social enterprise.
Social entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So the not-for-profits are filling that gap. Now, then there was this whole understanding that, look, is it the best deployment of resources when you're talking of not-for-profit? Because while the not-for-profits are very high on intent, maybe they are not the best in terms of implementing management principles.
Right.
And can you create sustainable business models where you don't need to keep on going to the donor or the philanthropist, but you create a business model which pays for itself.
Good.
And I think that's how the social enterprise came as, I would say, a third form of organization.
Yeah.
Where they are saying that, well, my primary objective is still addressing a social need, not a commercial need. That can be poverty market, that can be even sustainability, etc. But I am building a business model around it, which means that there will be some way by which I will have an income which pays for my cost.
Great. You sort of came to this where you said that social entrepreneurship is solving for market fate, using market principles, but solving for problems of the poor, right? Is that the formal definition in the books? And can you also elaborate on if that is impactful to the society? What counts as impact?
Okay. So the first one, the answer is possibly no, because one is this space still hasn't clearly crystallized the definition of a social enterprise. And I'll tell you where the problem comes. Because the moment you say social problems, social issues, then it's a very wide range. Only poverty is not a social issue. Corruption in politics can also be a social issue. And so think of an organization which is trying to bring out data about politicians with the intention of solving corruption, and they call themselves a social enterprise. So anybody can create an enterprise to solve the social problem, and that by definition becomes a social enterprise. So I think the way we look at it, we kind of narrow it down a little bit and say that yes, this can also be a social enterprise, but for our purpose, let's define it by saying that here is a financially viable business model at the center of it.
Okay.
And the primary objective of this organization is to solve a social problem.
And was like the different point of view. My thing is, and it's not disagreement, it's a slightly different point of view. Like, first of all, I go back to the market failure point, right? If market can solve the problem, then what is social entrepreneur doing? Like you are doing what the market can do, isn't it? So any problem can be solved through public policy. That's the role of the state, right? It can also be solved through activism, right? Or political process. It can be solved through entrepreneurship, right? Now, if market is not able to solve a problem and you have identified it and you are solving it using your entrepreneurial risk taking, I would call it this larger definition of social entrepreneurship, right? Addressing market failure. The second related point that I always want to bring, that you cannot actually solve a problem if you are not innovating, because if it was easy, it would have been solved. So it's a tough problem, and tough problems require breakthroughs and innovations, and therefore innovation is an integral part of that entrepreneurship.
There is a lot of focus out there on concepts or what actual impact is, right? In my experience, the first thing we speak about to social entrepreneurs is what is your theory of change? What would be a theory of change for an organization like Social Alpha?
See, it all starts with how you define impact, right? And the problem with impact, defining impact and measuring impact is attribution, right? So let's take the farmer example. If I am running an enterprise that is providing irrigation services to the farmers, and eventually after 1 year they have a better crop and they get a better price realization, maybe it was something else that helped them and not the irrigation, right? So unfortunately, in this whole impact space, attribution risk is very high, because you actually participate in a larger activity. It could be the agriculture department's extension work in the village that is encouraging this farmer to grow the right crop, or an NGO that is working with the farmer, helping them identify irrigation issues. And irrigation actually may be a problem where you have provided farmer a solar powered irrigation where they're not paying for a diesel or electricity bill, and they're over exploiting the water table.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So the oversimplification of impact definition and measurement could lead to 200 organizations claiming credit for farmers' income, while it could be something completely intrinsic to the farmer itself.
Yeah.
Right? So I stay away from that.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a need to measure something that cannot be defined properly. I think
Is that what people call?
fundamentally look at the intent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For example, if you are developing a new drug, and that drug can actually treat tuberculosis.
Okay.
At last 50 years, we have not invested in tuberculosis. Okay, it's the biggest killer, but none of the pharma companies are doing R&D in TB. Now you end up doing something. You start today, and say 8 years, you have a new drug that will go to market. So your impact cannot be defined at this point of time. But the fact that you are working on developing a new medicine for tuberculosis treatment, for me, is highest level of impact.
So the intent is impact first.
Intent is the only thing that you can measure and take a risk around that, because actual attribution of success is like business school.
Correct. Correct.
Will you evaluate success of a business school on the placement?
Yeah.
So what about the people who are not getting placed?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Back to you, Saurav. While we're debating what's impact and what's not, right? Something that occurred to me while you were speaking is we have seen revolutions like a Zomato or an Ola or a Swiggy, where an entire gig economy came into the formal economy, right? Why would you not call that work social entrepreneurship?
Very interesting. Yes, this is my favorite topic. And Swiggy Zomato is an example, which has come up of late, but I would think about, say, for example, a company which is into mining. And this company creates employment, and employment in such remote locations is a big challenge. At the same time, this company exploits various kind of exploitation. It pollutes the environment. It makes supernormal profits. Is that a social enterprise? Right. Now, the company would love to think so, that it is doing a lot of social good. So the way to look at it is that what is your primary objective? And it's good that you was talking about intent, because I think the job creation that has happened is not your primary objective. Right? Your primary objective was still making money,
Okay.
maximizing profit, maximizing shareholders' income, even legally. And there is no doubt, no dispute with that. But it just happens that in the process you have created employment. So for me, it is not a social enterprise. It's a commercial enterprise whose objective is pretty well aligned with some of the social benefits that we are talking about.
That's an outcome.
That's a outcome which has happened just because you want to be competitive, you want to do your activity, right? Let me give you one more example. I mean, in our countries, the telecom companies went and said, we are helping the poor fisherman because with such a low price, because of low price call rates, they are now able to discover markets, understand where they can sell their fish, or even the poor auto fellow can get their customer. Hey, hold on. I mean, you didn't reduce your price to benefit the fisherman and the auto fellow. You reduced your price because you thought that will be the best competitive move to do. In the process, some people get. Right? So I think that is where I would make a difference, but I am totally conscious that how difficult it is to even measure that, right? I mean, because intent is in the mind and you can't see that. So if someone comes and says, I have created 100,000 employment for 100,000 rupees, which the Swiggy and Zomato are doing, well, it is a social impact. But I would still go and contest that, hey, hold on, I mean, that was not your primary objective.
Would you give us some examples who were impact first, right? Probably a contrast to a Swiggy or a Zomato model, are actually social enterprises by your definition. And, in your work, you have seen so many of them. So if you can give us one or two examples like you just did for TB, with some of the startups that you have seen.
So there's several examples, right? If a startup is building a screening and diagnostic device that can reduce the cost of healthcare, make it more accessible, because healthcare out-of-pocket expenses are one of the major reasons for intergenerational poverty. People borrow for healthcare, right? So can you reduce the cost of diagnostics? Can you do early screening, early referral, and early treatment? So if a startup is working in this space, I would call it a social enterprise. Now, as you know, rightly you mentioned that job generation is an outcome, right? It's a byproduct of your business. Byproduct of your business happens, every business in that definition would be called social entrepreneurs, right? When I talk about intent, what is the intent of your business? To solve the problem, to make healthcare more affordable and accessible. Now, when you do it, your business model may actually end up creating shareholder value. Here, the value creation is a byproduct of your intent, right? So, the fundamental difference is you wanted to solve a socio-economic or environmental problem, and the byproduct was shareholder value. It's a social enterprise. Any business that has ability to go to public markets and get funded means that has become mainstream.
Hence, it is not a social enterprise.
It is, well, no, I'm not talking about whether it's social enterprise or not. I'm saying it's a mainstream business.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong in that.
Right.
Earlier, you were only surviving on private capital.
Correct.
Now you have a balance sheet, you have P&L that allows you to go to public market, right?
Absolutely.
So you have become mainstream. The microfinance today has become mainstream.
Correct.
Everybody wants to do that. Now, whether it's a social enterprise or not would depend upon what is the intent of investors in the microfinance.
Got it.
Right.
So the whole.
But I do have a challenge here.
Yes.
Because moment you are getting to public markets, the expectation of your shareholder is higher returns.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would I mean, there that whole argument comes in that, well, there is those pensioners who are depending on your dividend to survive. So shouldn't you maximize your return so that they benefit, and that is your social impact?
So are you saying an IPO can result in a dilution of the mission itself?
And to build on what he was talking about, I think when you get into an IPO, you have been able to get into a regular market, right? So hence my behavior by force will become like a for-profit enterprise.
Yes.
Is it bad? Good? I don't know. But is it bad for the cause? We have to really deeply think about it. And at least in the micro lending sector, we found that it led to mission dilution. Right? Will it happen everywhere? Well, I don't know. Right? But in general, I have always sensed that scaling is a double-edged sword. I mean, there are some businesses which become financially much more viable when you scale. But I have always thought that it is very difficult to scale ideology. You can replicate processes, you can scale organizations, and social enterprises are very ideologically dependent organization, right? At every point you are making trade-offs. You are reminding yourself that I am here to serve that particular need instead of maximizing profit. And moment you scale, become from 100 to 1,000, I'm not very sure whether you will be able to do that very well.
What is our fascination with scale? Because, you know, everywhere we see it's numbers, we see valuations, we see number of jobs, whatever it may be. I believe in our experience, at least with, you know, with seeing so many entrepreneurs at NSRCEL, we don't push for scale. If it happens, we enable it, right? I'm okay if an enterprise comes and says, so we have someone called Farming Buddha in Mysore. He knows he's solving for Mysore problem with respect to farmer incomes, transparency in milk delivery, and the quality of milk. And he's happy for the next 3 years to be in Mysore because he feels that that market needs to be tapped, right? And we are okay because we believe he needs to solve for the market. He needs to feed his family. He needs to feed his employees. That's the core. That's what we were trying to believe. What is the fascination with scale with our country? Your inputs on that, Manoj?
See, scale is not necessarily something that everybody chases or should chase, right? Scale is very contextual, and it depends upon business model, what problem you are solving, and the capital access, right? Some founders don't scale. They may run a profitable lifestyle business, right? Whether it's social enterprise or mainstream, it doesn't matter. But scale is not necessary for everyone. And scale doesn't mean acquisition of more customers, as we have been taught, right? Recently, that more customers keep burning cash and all that. But coming back to the whole idea of capital, right? We have to understand capital and its nature.
Okay.
It is not that private markets are better than public markets. It's not that once you do an IPO, then in the IPO, your delivery to shareholder becomes bigger. Even private investors can be very greedy and very demanding, right? So once you raise capital from private investors like VCs and private equity or public markets,
okay,
at the end of it, you will have to then deliver on the promise. Whether you are signing a term sheet with your Series A venture capital or you are filing IPO, right? You will still be responding to your investors. So if you don't want to do what your investors want, then you have only two options. One, grow on your internal cash accruals. That's the best thing to do. You don't dilute. And there are many successful companies who never raise money from outside and they do what they like to do.
Right.
Two, find investors who are like-minded, mission-driven, who would invest in you for impact first and not for the return. Unfortunately, those people do not exist in large number.
Great. Which comes to what is social alpha, who funds social alpha, because we know the sources of, you know, the origin being philanthropic. But I think if you can cover a little bit of
social alpha basically is an operating philanthropic, right?
Okay.
So we need two types of capital to do our work because we are very early. So we work with R&D institutions on building a pipeline of innovations. We develop these into ventures. So we work with incubators and accelerators across the country, but we also then deploy it on the ground. So we work on the demand side.
Okay.
So if you look at innovation as the key, key word here, we work on the supply side of innovation, which is the R&D ecosystem. We work on the demand side of the innovation, that is, say, healthcare system or farmers or small and medium enterprises, right? So when you work on demand and supply side, you actually generate all the ingredients of market creation, right? So it's a full stack architecture, right from lab to market to deployment to scale.
Right.
Right. So you need different type of capital. You need capital which is philanthropic and which can be used in designing these de-risking programs throughout the life of a startup, right? So you need money for product development. It has to be non-dilutive capital, right? Then you need to do a pilot. Again, you need non-dilutive capital, right? You need to subsidize market access sometimes. So you need programmatic capital. We raise this from philanthropic institutions and CSR, and we deploy it in different stages. So it could be an accelerator for clinical trials. It could be a agri-tech deployment program in Odisha, just to validate the product market fit.
Okay.
The second category of capital that we need is investment capital. That doesn't come from CSR or philanthropy.
Correct.
So that's our balance. That is founder circle, we call it. It's a group of friends and sympathizers who are willing to donate to Social Alpha, and we use that pool of capital to invest. But when we get an exit, it goes back to the same pool of.
Okay, so you do have a diversified source of philanthropy and a private capital pool.
No, we have all philanthropy.
All philanthropy.
All.
Even the private people who want to fund you don't expect returns.
Yes. We are a not-for-profit. We only take grants, right? There are programmatic grants which are used for de-risking, and there is an investment capital which is called unrestricted grant. When somebody writes a check, so as you might write a check to Social Alpha saying that this money can be used in whatever form, then it becomes unrestricted capital. That unrestricted capital can go for grant, equity, debt unlocking, anything. So we have created this blended finance model through which we can de-risk an innovation at any stage in its life. And also capture the value, right? Because we work with the for-profit enterprises, we can capture the value if they are successful and put the money back in the system.
Very good. Can you illustrate the same concept with an example of a venture that went through this journey with Social Alpha?
There are many. We just had an exit. I can give an example.
Yes.
So we had a company way back in 2019 from IIT Madras, a group of PhD students, and they had developed a new phase change material. So we...
What's the entity called?
1090.
1090, yes.
So we funded a pilot, right? We gave them a grant. We funded a pilot in UP that validated the product.
Okay.
And then we invested in them.
Okay.
And then we again funded certain pilots and de-risking, programs for a few years. And then the investors came in.
Okay.
And recently, one investor wanted us out from the cap table. We said, okay, we made an exit. This money gone back to the same pool of capital. Right?
And this happened over a period of how many years?
2019 to 2025, 6 years. This is short. It may take 10, there are medical devices companies which can take 10, 15 years also, right? Yeah. So we have a 1.5 Tesla MRI machine, for example. First time in India, deep tech startup built from scratch. It's now 9 years. Yeah.
Wow.
It was an entrepreneur in residence, then we hybrid off as a company, and now they've got CDSCO approval. So they are doing their first commercial installation. Once that happens, then we have to think about what next.
A lot of them come to you when they are product ready or pre-product.
You can use an analogy of a school, right? So you get students at every class. So we get people who have an idea. We get people who have a prototype. We get people who are ready. We basically now have created 3 buckets: ready to pilot,
okay,
ready to deploy, ready to scale. And depending upon where they are, we can create. And it's very hands-on model, right?
And this is an evolution of your services.
Yeah. When I started, I thought it's only a money problem. We would write check and then miracle would happen. And that happened, right? So we built this whole full stack architecture over the last 9 years.
Okay.
And because this is all about risk management.
Right.
And these entrepreneurs, before they can scale
right.
and solve a problem and create impact, they need to de-risk.
Yeah.
And you need capital to de-risk them.
Yeah.
You need infrastructure to de-risk them. You need a larger partner ecosystem to
yes. So someone like a TAN 90 or even Hasirudala that you mentioned before, right? A lot of the examples you are quoting, and that's your work, right? Philanthropic interventions for science and deep tech. Where do you send them? Do you think institutional infrastructure in India, coupled with academia in India, which hosts a lot of this institutional infrastructure like R&D labs, etc., do we think as a country we are ready to take more such innovations?
See, we have very strong R&D ecosystem. We have IISc, IIT, CSIR ecosystem, DRDO, BARC, TIFR. We have a large R&D ecosystem. What we lack is this lab to market to deployment architecture, right? Now, for the large business, this is not a problem, because if, say, you are running a pharma company and somebody discovers a new molecule, you will license it, but your own R&D will then convert it into a solution, right? So for mainstream large business, they have their own R&D. Okay. They work with academia, so academia industry interface works fine.
Right.
Right. There is no R&D for poor. There is no R&D for planet. Right. So who will do R&D for a smallholder farmer or micro enterprise or plastic program?
Right.
Right. Now, if you have to solve a really big societal problem or environmental problem, you need breakthrough innovation. Right? Therefore, you need a bridge between science and society. And that bridge we don't think that we need that bridge because industry and academia interface is so intuitively well designed that they know how to work with each other, right? But how will a smallholder farmer work with IIT?
Question for you: how would an IMB respond to a smallholder farmer? And then, if you can wear that an academic hat for the country, he's saying that we have cracked the early stage and access to early stage infrastructure, but the latter is what is missing. What's your take on that? Where are our academic institutions in terms of hosting maybe the next stage of entrepreneurship in this sector?
I mean, I don't think I have a very optimistic view of that, given the current state of affairs. I mean, if you look at it's again a demand-supply situation, right? I mean, if you look at all these institutions, IITs, IIMs, National Law School, the ones whom you will think are at the top and who are pretty good when it comes to taking international rankings and so on, they typically would cater to a very narrow sliver of economically well off, whether it is students, entrepreneurs, or companies. It is again the place where, I mean, there may be exceptions, but I think this is where that English speaking, well groomed people always have an advantage, right? I mean, do we really have the time or the mindset to look at somebody who only speaks vernacular, because we can't handle that variety, right? I mean, one will speak in Odia, other will speak in Tamil. I said, hey, do you know English? Please give me a spreadsheet presentation and I can evaluate you better, right? So I'm not so optimistic about us, but what I'm optimistic about is the fact that maybe a lot of other institutions, being inspired by this wave of entrepreneurship that is going on in the whole country, maybe they will be able to cater to such. And I think Social Alpha has some very inspiring stories where I'm sure probably some of the people whom they are incubating don't even know English, right? And I think that's where we need. Will IITs and IIMs do that? I am very doubtful, right? And whether we have the capability to cater.
Are you answering with respect to offering educational courses or hosting entrepreneurship capacity?
Both. I'm talking of both, right?
Which do you think will come first, though?
You're saying catering to the
like we don't even have do we have a Hindi MBA offering institution, right?
No, we don't have, right? Absolutely not, right?
Really need an MBA to be an entrepreneur?
That's a whole different question.
No, that's a good question, right? That please note that at least I can speak of IIMs. IIMs were never structured to cater to entrepreneurship, right? We are, even till today, I think 90% of us are structured to cater to the large companies. And this thing about entrepreneurship coming in and, for us NSRCEL, and then you are evolving into looking at the social side, is how many years old? I mean, it's relatively very, very young.
We tried at NSRCEL to run a program called Swalambane to it was with the World Bank, it was with NRLM, SRLM, 150 odd women entrepreneurs. Trying to deliver the program in Canada was a challenge. We tried it, and I think the time is here, because from what I'm hearing, and a lot of entrepreneurs that we see across the country that come to NSRCEL, there is a definite bias. It has to be, I mean, I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's the system's fault. Our, let's say, outreach, applications, web pages, the process of selection, the way the panelists ask questions are a little bit more biased to someone who is able to talk in English, is able to make a PPT, and is able to explain that to someone sitting on the panel.
Why are we talking about that? Can a person who goes to government school and say, Odisha, crack a cat? Or JE? We have not designed the entire system for that. So that to become an entrepreneur, you don't need anything, right? I tell people that if you're really going to be an entrepreneur, don't waste time, in education system. Education system has failed us, right? But where I actually disagree with you on only one thing, on optimism, I'm stubbornly optimist.
Yes.
Because I've failed so many times. Yeah. I'm stubbornly optimist. The thing is, there is no other option.
Yeah.
One. The second thing is, all these real change makers are coming from subaltern India, from vernacular background, from places, Nasik, Aurangabad, Kanpur, Jodhpur, Bhubaneswar. These are the places where these people are coming from, not from Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay. A lot of them. And they are really solving problems which have not been solved. And a lot of interest I'm seeing in academia. So, for example, we have 15 companies in our portfolio which are pre-remerging. They have no revenue because they are still doing R&D. Where are they? In NCBS, in STEM, in a CSIR lab. And why? Right? A lot of these people have seen success stories in other countries and they have an aspiration to build these companies, right? MRI example, he was an associate professor in IIT Bombay who quit his job to build this company and has been without a job for 9 years, right? People are taking risk. And that is what is very important.
But these entrepreneurs that you meant from, let's say, a Nagpur or an Aurangabad or Nasik, are they moving to a Mumbai or a Bangalore to have access to such facilities?
If they need, they can get it, right? We know how to get that. We have built labs outside academia also to help them. But the thing is, I recently met an entrepreneur in Bhubaneswar who is from Maharashtra, a farmer who innovated for their own farming needs and realized that it can be a startup. And we are actually helping with a pilot in Odisha under one of our program. We are seeing this. One of our startup came from Jodhpur, another one from Kanpur. These are, people with dreams, aspirations, and they make me optimist about it, right? Not the academia. But the scientist in academia thinking about solving a problem and spinning off startup is also very, very encouraging. Not many, but I said 15 companies I have today which are pre-revenuing, right? And that is where the risk-taking capability is very important, right? One, you need entrepreneurial risk-taking, whether it is in academia or outside academia. Are people willing to roll up sleeve and take entrepreneurial risk? Which means, do they have skin in the game? Second, investor. Are there investors who are willing to underwrite risk?
Yeah.
Right. If investors are not willing to underwrite this risk, then they should not call themselves impact investor.
Right.
Right. Impact investment is all about underwriting the risk that another investor will not underwrite.
Yeah. In fact, less than 10% of all the venture capital that has come in the last 5 years is considered impact investment. And even within that, less than 20% is into rural or small towns, which is, let's say, agriculture or financial inclusion at the max.
I don't think venture capital is the right model to use here.
But the numbers are similar for philanthropy as well. The numbers are very similar for philanthropy as well. 80% of the philanthropy is going to 12 states.
Yeah, philanthropy.
Or into 5
I have no complaint with venture capital, okay?
Yeah.
Because I have played that game. Venture capital is managing other people's money. You raise money from others, right? And then invest and then provide them a return. You have a fiduciary responsibility to your limited partners who are investors in your fund. It's not your own money. So I never blame venture capital for not funding social impact.
It's a different asset class for a different.
It's a very different asset class. It's not for social impact.
Yes.
Philanthropy has to take that risk. Unfortunately, we have not seen domestic philanthropy funding innovation. Globally, you look at Gates Foundation, you look at Wellcome Trust. These are some of the foundations who are funding deep research, right? We are now seeing some, right? Recently, Nilekani Family Philanthropy and Prasant Prakash have funded a research in NCBS on neuro, right? Similarly, Chris Gopalakrishnan created Center. These are some examples. Tata Group, Tata Trust created TIFR and TIGS. These are some examples, but not a lot.
And
also,
speaking about it,
not in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
I have not yet seen Indian philanthropic capital going into entrepreneurship.
Is academia in India doing a lot of, let's say, case studies on the new age innovations in deep tech or social entrepreneurship, or have examples been more older? Like,
listen, I mean, the way I look at it, academia is always several steps behind industry. And there are structural reasons for that. Industry can experiment quite a lot. So it's almost like a evolutionary mechanism where you randomly experiment and some models survive. And the survival rate is 1 in 10.
yes.
Academics looks at that and says that, well, what have I learned from there? So to your question, are academicians looking at this problem? I am very doubtful. Okay, because this is really something that we haven't yet figured out. Today, we have a reasonable understanding of where social enterprises work, but that is the traditional model, not where you combine sustainability and technology to it. I mean, I don't know whether industry will figure it out, but they will experiment. And out of those 100 experiments, 5 will survive, and then academia will step back and say, yeah, you know what, this is the pattern I'm seeing out of that. Sustainability at its core is a science problem, far more complex than the social problem that we are talking about there. Right, the social problem is not such a complicated problem of science. It's more about intent, about financing, about distribution, which management education, that's the core of management education. But moment you're talking of sustainability, there has to be science at the core of it. And there comes the other challenge that here I need a lot more collaboration between an IIT and an IIM and probably a national law school, which by the way is not at all easy.
Okay.
Right, so this is a much tougher problem from my perspective.
Yeah.
I just want to conclude this whole, I would say, evolution and, where academia is trying to catch up. When you said there will be failures and academia will wait and see and will need a few success stories to then document, right? What are we waiting for now? We've seen Ether, you just go IPO. We've seen ventures like Tan90 and Solinas from IIT Madras. We've seen ventures like Trashpan from NSRCEL, who had these deep tech impactful innovations. And every now and then when we want to call, for our future entrepreneurs, some speakers from this world, we sort of don't have any case studies to refer to. If you want to sum it up in one line, what are we waiting for?
No, I think we need more examples. Because with every Ether, you also have an example of an Ola Electric.
Or a Blue Smart.
Or a Blue Smart. So there are a lot of others. Should we really wait for a really long time? I don't think so, right? But theory development or creating, so at the core of education is generalizability, right? There can be a very great story or a real example of an Ether, but what is the generalizability of that, right? If it comes down to individual enterprise of the founder, then it is not something that can be taught with. I mean,
okay.
Right? So I think that is the challenge has always been for academia, that, when is the time when you can generalize? And remember, our standards are also fairly high. That is, it rigorous and can apply it in other places, etc. Hence, we are conservative. We will take time. But when it comes to case studies, I agree with you that these case studies of both success and failure has to be disseminated, discussed a lot, because even before academia starts writing about it, I think we can learn a lot from those case studies.
Okay. So we spoke about a lot of, I would say, philanthropic sources of capital as catalyst to all this. Who do you think is not doing enough to catalyze more of social entrepreneurship among the different players who can, right? We've seen government doing something. We've seen, philanthropists starting to do a lot of things. Who are other players who you think should do more?
Academic institutions are not doing enough. That's my sense.
Okay.
Because especially where I come from, there are structural reasons for an IIM to be in a particular manner. I don't think we are doing enough for that, right? I would also put some amount of responsibility on incubators like yours, because today I see among the young people, the dominant philosophy of being an entrepreneur is those high valuation models, right? Who are their role models? People who have made a lot of money by exiting. This, as we discussed, is not going to work in social enterprise. I mean, solve the problem, be purpose driven. I mean, at some level, these sound like a very, motherhood statement. But I think we have to find ways of embedding that, both as an academic institute in our academic itself, and as an incubator also, you have to do a lot to ensure that, people are looking in those directions.
What's your take on this?
See, an entrepreneur's wealth creation model and example that we are seeing today is through selling at every higher valuation, right? It is not linked to P&L, right? If you talk to a small business, right, or a shopkeeper or a medium enterprise, they will talk about profit and loss, right? Currently, the whole model, the venture capital funded model, is about successive rounds of investment. Every round of investment is at a higher valuation and creating opportunity for selling in secondary so that everybody can sell to the next round of investor. That model will create wealth, but that model is not necessarily creating value. In the sense, out of all the e-commerce startup, you have only one surviving now, right? And and the whole model is about finding one big winner, right? Winner takes all kind of thing. But the winner who is taking all is also not yet profitable, right? So this is what we are seeing. I think the message incubators need to convey to the entrepreneurs who are interested in solving societal problem is that they need to go back to the old business model where you are actually solving for the customer and end user, making sure you are building something that is acceptable to them and they're willing to pay for it because they see value in it.
Okay.
Right? And end users or customers pay for something when they see value, and that value will determine whether you will remain in business or not. Right? So going back to the basics of business is very important, because they will never get access to the capital that mainstream business has today. Right? So this clarity has to be there in an entrepreneur who is building for solving for farmers or a small enterprise or even climate change.
So academia, incubator, and I think I can add one more here. I feel the government, right? I'm not saying this government or that government, the state itself. If you see some of the important things that they've driven, which has actually got us here, I feel there are three things. One is 2014, the CSR law, which brought in what today is more than a 30,000 crore industry, which funds incubators like us. Second is, I think SIDBI had a social venture capital fund, which I think closed in 2019 or 2020, but that was a start. It just didn't repeat. And third is the whole social stock exchange movement, where there is a definition of a market disruption for a non-profit to have a project IPO or eventually for profit. These three initiatives are instrumental to the sector, but they've come every 5 years. In your opinion, what more should the government do for social entrepreneurship?
I think there are three things we have to. They are very disjointed, but they indicate to the same thing. Point number one: government is the biggest investor in innovation today. Private sector is not doing enough. Actually, not doing anything other than their own internal R&D, and philanthropy is not doing. Okay. Government has multiple schemes. Every ministry has got a startup promotion scheme, DST, DBT, Niti Aayog. Then every state government has a scheme. Karnataka, you are running this scheme with Karnataka government, right? There's enough money in the system for startups and for innovation, right? The problem is not that. The problem is it is suboptimally distributed. When you design, right? When you design a program or a scheme, you have to design it for entrepreneurship. You cannot design entrepreneurship development program the way you design Manrega, because Manrega is a social justice program.
Right.
So it will be designed with certain design principles. Same design principles are not applicable to startup promotion, right? So I think what we need to do is to consolidate multiple schemes and be little Darwinian when you identify entrepreneurs and startups and fund them in a milestone based model where they have access to capital when they need it and when they qualify for it, right? It should not be an entitlement based system. Number one. But if we have to learn from market and apply some of the good things that market offers in this space. The second thing about mobilizing additional capital. Government capital is limited. So only a fraction of budget will go to it.
And cannot be applied to every sector also.
Yeah. So therefore, it has to be used for unlocking different. Now, philanthropic capital, you gave example of CSR. Unused, unspent CSR is larger than what the number you mentioned.
It's not documented, not disclosed, right?
Yeah. Number one. Number two, it is disjointed. Right? So your company CSR, you take a decision based on your understanding of social impact. My company CSR, I do. His company CSR, is that. So are we spending CSR money more strategically to solve a problem? Can we not aggregate the capital and deploy it in a programmatic way to solve a problem? Right? So to me, technically speaking, a lot of CSR money is just waste.
So I think I would want to sum it up saying there is scope for someone like an academia and incubators to do more. And there is scope for, I think do more in the sense probably go back to drawing boards and do something very concrete.
Specifically for the social.
Yeah, specifically for social entrepreneurship.
But give you one advice as an incubator in academia you can do. Instead of becoming a program implementation agency of corporate CSR, you design your own programs and ask them to fund that.
I think we're there.
Most of the incubators and NGOs have become implementers of someone sitting in corporate office as head of CSR is designing a program and asking you to implement, and for some 18% or 20% program management cost you are implementing that. That is disjointed. But if you write your own program and go to 10 CSR funders and say, I want all of you to fund this program, you can create much larger impact.
I think, definitely we have evolved to a point where we are doing that now. I mean, may not be maybe 10 years ago, but I think now with all the hard work over the years, we are able to define problem statements and we are able to take it not only to one corporate, we'll say multiple, because maybe not one can either fit the budget or match the expertise. And I feel, to just sum up what I was saying, yes, academia and incubators may have to go to the drawing board in certain senses. But with respect to philanthropy and corporates, that probably needs an entire revolution of change in the way of thinking, right? And when all these four happen, these become very, I would say, instrumental catalysts that can define the next 20 years of social entrepreneurship.
This whole space is all about risk. Who can take highest risk? Who can take highest risk? Philanthropy. Government risk taking is constrained because of GFR, CAG audit, and procedures that bureaucrats have to follow, right? Philanthropic capital is absolutely high risk. If philanthropy cannot underwrite product development risk, if philanthropy cannot underwrite, pollution, emission, smallholder farmers, small business, waste management, circular economy, who will do that? Private sector has a cost of capital, right? What is the cost of capital for a philanthropy? Zero.
I think that's a great call to action.
Right?
Yeah.
Cost of capital for a venture capital is very high.
Yeah.
A VC has to deliver return to its LPs. They are not the right people to solve the social problem.
Yeah.
Philanthropy needs to raise to the occasion. Unfortunately, we are not seeing the evidence of that.
Okay.
Except sporadic, some work by. I have to give
it's
credit
begun. It's begun.
We have to give credit to philanthropists who are funding innovation, but they are microscopic minority. Most of the philanthropists are not funding, and considering the money was already donated by the philanthropist, they are only managing it as a fiduciary person responsible for managing somebody's money. They are not playing that game where the risk-taking capabilities would be highest. So that's the problem, and we are seeing that problem. Unfortunately, you should be, reaching out to these people and asking for more. And your institution was set up by a philanthropist, na? So what great example it is.
Great. I think we've sort of covered some really critical, let's say, problem statements in the industry, but would like to sort of come to a closure with some sort of, I would say, if someone is more curious, where do they go to, right? So, for sort of question for you is, where does one go for a formal education in social entrepreneurship, be it India or abroad? Courses at undergraduate level or a master's level?
See, India, we have heard of TISS, social sciences, and I knew some of the professors there. And I think one great thing they do is that they say if you join the social entrepreneurship program, there is no placement for you. Right? So when you are going out, you have to start a social enterprise. I think that's the most effective design I have heard about.
Yeah.
And how do they do that? I mean, they kind of ensure that their past social entrepreneurs are actually coming and talking to the classes, and they develop that. Is it very effective? I don't know, but I think that's a very compelling model.
We've seen a few who tried from the TIS. I mean, good that they tried. They probably didn't succeed, but who are now my colleagues at NSRCEL. Right?
Okay.
So it's for us also. It's a good thing that they did it because they understand being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good beginning. Credit to Professor Satyajit and group. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, outside I was just discussing, I knew that, Oxford Science School had a focus on social entrepreneurship. I mean, there are some of these institutes, but other than that, again, I think social entrepreneurship is a very local problem. I mean, I don't think you can go to UK and learn a solved problem in India. So I think it's better to be here. The other way that I think of is if you want to be a social entrepreneur, do you really want to go to a business school at all? Right? I mean, it's a far better thing probably to do an internship, get your hands dirty, understand what is out there, and then make up your mind. Especially, I'm talking of a very young person. I mean, who is kind of debating many of these options. Yeah, I mean, I knew that Barefoot College had a good model of correct. You go and work with them, then they will encourage you to go and start your own, stuff and all.
Timbuktu Collective also had a thing.
Sorry?
Timbuktu Collective also had.
Okay, yeah. Right? So some of those things are, I think, much better because that also passes you to the test that are you really made for it, or is it like a very fancy romantic idea that you want and you will not really survive the hardships of that.
Can you name some books, case studies, movies that people can watch regarding this?
See, there are a whole bunch of books on social entrepreneurship, but I would encourage people to read books which are written with the very Indian context in mind. Right? There are, you can start from it's not about social entrepreneurship, but to understand this area, you can look at a book like Poor Economics, where, the economists are coming and talking about what works and what does not work. There is a book by Professor Madhukar Shukla of XLRI. It's probably named Social Entrepreneurship, something. Yeah. So I would encourage them to read books and case studies which are very India focused so that they understand the context.
You're being humble by not naming your book, Inclusive Business Models.
Yeah. Sure.
And
I think
Naga's book recently was
Naga's book is
Back to Bharat.
Back to Bharat. Many of the case studies are also there on websites of many of the social enterprises, right? So if you go to their website, then you will always find they may not be written in a manner which academics write a case study, but still it kind of gives you a good sense about what is that. I also loved when Selco comes and does this failure conferences because, you learn a lot from failures and success stories. So I think India, you have enough examples, right? There's no dirt. If you want to be a social entrepreneur, then this is probably the best place.
Any documentaries or movies you can think of?
Documentaries, I'm not very sure. I don't know. No. You guys should make one.
What I would recommend, and it is not about social entrepreneurship. Taleb has a book called Skin in the Game.
Yes.
I think everybody should read that book. It's a really insightful, hard-hitting book on the concept. I don't agree with everything that Taleb said, but the concept of skin in the game, we always win.
Okay.
The way he had articulated in his book is very, very
okay. Some things from you, Manoj. What sectors you think are non-negotiable today for someone to intervene? I'm thinking from the point of view of, let's say, someone who's 18 to 25 years old now, coming to the job market, coming into a professional life, and wants to innovate. What sectors are non-negotiable for funders to innovate in, and for founders to innovate and for funders to back?
Yeah. So if you actually want to solve some of the really tough problems, the market is very big. My thing is, you solve the problem, money will come to you. I'll give you an example. Non-invasive diagnostics. Right? Can you give me a solution that I can use in primary healthcare to measure hemoglobin without taking a sample of blood, for example? Right? Screening and diagnostic devices. I'll give you one very, very intuitively simple one, but nobody is doing that today. Biogas.
Okay.
There is not a single Indian company that has productized decentralized biogas for rural use.
Many tried and failed though in the past.
But this is open source knowledge. It's an engineering problem somebody has to solve. I have a company, we did their first pilot, and it's from Mexico. It was in Colorado State University. From there, it came to India.
Systema
Bio. We brought them to India. We funded their first pilot. Okay, and we continue to give them business as we implement biogas solution. Not a single company in our portfolio is doing biogas. Okay, I'm willing to bet any amount of money. It's an engineering problem.
Is it because on potential entrepreneurs feel that there is no money to be made?
People don't think there is money in it.
Exactly, right?
Right. And it's a great problem to solve. Why? One, it increases farmers' income. Right? It's full circular. It creates cooking gas for your kitchen and biofertilizer for your field. And by the way, as a byproduct of this, it reduces the methane emission.
Yes.
So you can earn carbon credits also, right? All Indian farmers are smallholder farmers with 2, 3, 4 cows, right? So, like in your house, you have refrigerator, you have microwave, you have dishwasher, you have washing machine. Can we have a small box that's called biogas? System has a beautiful product, but there is no competition.
So the market is theirs then.
There is no competition. We are doing 10,000 biogas this year. We have no. Who do we procure from?
Okay, so biogas, non-invasive diagnostic.
Non-invasive diagnostic.
What about, I feel
Batteries,
like batteries, yes.
lithium. You know, if you see critical materials supply chain globally, China controls everything. So we can talk about geopolitical security,
White gold.
right? We don't have battery. So why are we not investing in, say, iron batteries or aluminum battery, zinc, magnesium, or sodium ion chemistry? So we have one sodium ion chemistry we have invested in, right? But investors will not invest right now, but somebody has to take the risk. So you are saying what areas, right? There's so many areas. I can give you 100 problem statements.
I'm thinking Bangalore traffic and air pollution.
No, 100 problem statements exist where if you solve, you will make a lot of money and you will become rich. But your objective should be solving the problem. Money will be a byproduct.
It's incidental, right? Yeah. Okay, great. In fact, we just had a venture called Mini Minds. I don't know if you have met them, but they have the first patented technology to have sustainable ways of recycling lithium-ion batteries, and I think investors backed them some $5 million. But it's coming.
Colors, pigments, dyes.
From one of the podcasts I was listening to, I think it was from the Ken. They've said that India has solved for all problems indoor. Like we have deliveries, we have groceries, we have air conditioners, everything, but we have not solved for the outdoor, right? And I think that sort of relates to whatever you said, right? Outdoor as in public infrastructure and innovations related to infrastructure, air pollution, all those things.
No, we have done great innovation. UPI is one of the finest innovation we have done, right? It has scaled like anything. Because why did it scale? Because it's very contextual, it's intuitive, everybody can use it, it solves everybody's problem, it doesn't cost a lot of money, right? So everybody and anybody is using UPI today, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say, there should be an intent to solve a problem, and then an ecosystem that promotes it, right? And entrepreneurs have too many problems they can address.
Not necessarily rural, urban, whatever it is, right?
Rural is a big thing. Smallholder farmers do not have farm mechanization. Do you know this? Nobody makes farm equipment for smallholder farmers. So we have a company, Neo Farm, they're doing very good now, right? Marut tractor, which is EV equivalent in tractors. We need smallholder farmers solutions, right? We need post-harvest loss containment, right? So if grid is not there, how will the cold storage run? Can you do off-grid cold storage, right? Those kind of solutions.
Okay.
Again, your healthcare, right? Primary healthcare. So many opportunities are there.
Old age. We are all going to live longer and we're going to be more miserable.
Yes.
So there are
technologies,
lot of
aging,
lot of possibilities there.
That's a market we're looking into. Right?
And that has the entire segment, right?
Elder tech.
You have people who can pay you, you have the poor, right, who will not be able to pay you. So the commercial enterprise will always target the top. The social enterprise needs to come here and see if I can do something about it.
Manoj, for an entrepreneur to be ready to meet an organization like yours, right? What do you think top 2-3 things that they should be ready with before they meet you?
They should be able to articulate the problem they are trying to solve, 1. 2, they should be able to demonstrate some proof of concept or evidence at some stage. It can be prototype stage, it can be deployment stage, it can be ready for scale with some data on or evidence on their earlier deployment. So any stage, but what problem you are solving, how you are solving this problem, how you are different from others, right? And how do you address the market better? Skin in the game, of course. First thing I check is skin in the game.
Okay. All right. I think we've concluded our podcast here, and I think we've had some great conversation on what is social entrepreneurship and who are the players, how have things come across in terms of how things evolve, and some great examples of innovators and entrepreneurs.
I hope listening to this triggers entrepreneurship in people who have not thought about it, especially in solving for problems locally. And I hope people who are already solving for gain a lot more knowledge. So thank you so much, Saurav and Manoj, for sharing your time, wisdom, and all the effort that you've put in the industry over the last few years. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting. Thanks for a great conversation.
We enjoyed listening to each other, and I at least learned quite a lot.
Me too.
Join us for the next episode with Eric Savage and Dr. Randhir Mishra.